Hey guys! Today I want to talk with you about If We Were Villains, a contemporary fiction novel slash thriller as well as an impressive debut of ML Rio that was published in 2017. As per usual, we will start this video with a short synopsis, and then proceed to the non-spoiler review and wrap this video up with the spoilers. If you haven't had a chance to read If We Were Villains yet, then do not worry. I will make sure to let you know when the spoilers begin. So even though If We Were Villains is written from one character's POV, through his eyes we get to follow 7 young students attending an elite and somewhat untraditional arts college in which they study Shakespeare. This tight-knitted group of friends live and breathe for their art to an extent where the tragedies which are supposed to be left for the stage starts to spill into their real lives. And soon enough, one of the 7 is found dead, as well as our main character, Oliver, is being charged with a murder he may or may not have committed. As I have mentioned shortly before, in this novel we follow 7 characters. A talented and self-assured Richard, a femme fatale, a bombshell Meredith, Richard's cousin Wren, a down-to-earth, kind-hearted woman, Oliver, our main character, his best friend and eternal hero James, Alex, the free-spirited troublemaker, and Philippa, an incredibly loyal, friend to everyone kind of a lady. From the very first pages, it is very clear to us that this group of actors has been in this university together for a while. We learn that they worked incredibly hard for this unique opportunity to attend this prestigious college, and that by now, being in their last year of studies, they all have fallen into well-known, understood, and typecasted roles they inadvertently continue to play even after leaving the stage. For me though, personally, I found the characters to be difficult to root for. While I found Meredith most interesting to read about, I can't honestly say that I liked either one of them. All main 7 characters are over-the-top dramatic, pretentious, and self-absorbed. Even Oliver, the guy who's supposed to be the kindest person, who always forgives and forgets, while soft and loving with his peers, is incredibly neglectful and sometimes even cruel towards his family. And yet, all these more often than not irritating characters work perfectly for this world they're living in. And yes, that college they chose to study at is their whole world. Nothing outside its walls matter. It's a cult-like obsession. I'm not sure if this happens with every department within the college or if our 7 actors are a special breed, but reading about their life in such college made me doubt of their ability to survive and thrive in the real world. Anyhow, that being said, I do not think that the goal of ML Rio was to make the characters of this novel likable. Richard is narcissistic, Meredith uses people to cover up her insecurities, Alex is an addict, Oliver has no spine, James is spiteful, Wren is reminiscent of a damsel in distress who follows the direction of anyone else, and Philippa to me felt fake. It's pointed out multiple times that Philippa is a professional extra, that she is so versatile that she could step into anyone's shoes with an ease. And in my eyes, this versatility took away from her authenticity as a person. I can't really pinpoint any major flaw when it comes to her the same way I can with the others, but that's because I also can't pinpoint who she actually is. Overall, If We Were Villains is not a fun book, not a pretty book, not the type of book that you would grab to read after work in order to relax. I would even go as far as to say that I found this novel to be draining. But that's a part of its beauty. It's raw and difficult and unapologetic. The author had a very clear idea of what she wanted this book to be, and she followed through without thinking if it would appeal to the masses. And I think that's wonderful. As If We Were Villains is unique. It's one of a kind. It's the type of book I can't say that I have read before. If anything, I found this book to be difficult to talk about, as well as to recommend it to others or to explain to someone why they should give it a try. What is the story that hooks the reader in? Because this book is less of a story it tells and more of a feeling. I understand perfectly why the fans of Dark Academia find this book to be immensely enjoyable, But I also understand the people who need to take multiple breaks and read something lighter in order to be able to come back to this novel and fully appreciate what it has to offer. The only actual issue I had with this novel might be a very personal me problem, but as a fan of Shakespeare's sonnets more than his plays, I found this book at times boring and tedious to read. Now believe me when I say that If We Were Villains is filled with direct quotes of Shakespeare's plays. And while I understand why we would get pages of descriptions of the main characters performing on stage that are only interrupted with the Shakespearean quotes, what really grind my gears is that the actors more often than not proceeded to talk with one another in this overly complicated manner. Shakespeare's direct quotes are constantly being intertwined with the regular speech. And every time I saw the passage of quotes approaching, I felt like I need to actively try to figure out what the person is trying to say. I honestly felt like I have traveled back in time and that I'm sitting again in a literature class being forced to explain why the author picked the color blue for the living room curtains. And if I decided to opt for being lazy and simply reading the lines without paying more than a superficial look to them, I felt like I might miss a part of dialogue which might be important for the future events. That being said, this particular type of writing is simply not my cup of tea. I'm sure there are plenty of people out there who found the author's ability to intertwine Shakespeare plays into everyday dialogue to be absolutely fascinating. If you are a fan of dark academia, then this is a book you absolutely need to read. If you are a fan of Shakespeare, then this is a book you absolutely need to read. And if you are a fan of character-driven novels, then this is a book you absolutely need to read. With this in mind, let's move to the spoiler review, where we could talk a little bit more about the actual plot of the novel. Let me start the spoiler review by saying that Richard's switch to an abusive asshole was incredibly sudden. I understand that he was never truly a good guy, but he was also not shown to be violent until one day he's not given a role he hoped to get, and so he almost instantaneously starts systematically hurting his friends and his girlfriend. I mean, I could understand his behavior in the party in which he almost drowned James. I can understand it, not justify it. But he was upset, he was drunk, he felt pushed by Meredith, and he let his impulses get the worst of him. But then he proceeds to use his strength to injure his only friends for months without any remorse. Now that's just sociopathic. Am I to believe that the other 6 were friends with him for 3 years despite noticing his anger issues? I get that they could look past him being full of himself, but how could they look past him being dangerous? Or had he only turned into this after not getting a part? Then that feels like a not realistic enough of a reason for his character to change this drastically. I guess what I'm trying to say is that I do not mind him becoming a cartoon villain, a cliche jock without redeeming qualities. I would just love to be given a possibility to understand the motivations for his actions better. That being said, this book is written from Oliver's POV, and since Oliver never got to know what got into Richard, then I guess we were not meant to know it either. Overall, I feel like after Richard's death is where the story really starts to pick up. I would dare to say that as soon as we learn that it's Richard who had been killed, in my mind James instantly popped up as a killer. And my suspicion of him was firstly based on a very circumstantial evidence, aka his behavior during the night of the murder. Oliver finds James in the middle of the night in the shower. James justifies his behavior saying that he just threw up and consequently he feels icky and needs a shower. But honestly, the moment we know that Richard was killed, that's the moment I knew that James threw up, not because of the alcohol in his system, but because he just killed his classmate, his friend. The same way I knew that he needed the shower to clean off the blood and scrub off the reminder on his body of what he had done. Now, I'm not saying that James' explanation is entirely unrealistic, but to me, he in that bathroom, he seemed that sober. No pun intended. And if you drank enough to have to throw up, then most likely you do not have the energy to slip into the shower straight afterwards. Once again, I'm not saying that nobody does that in real life, just saying that it's an uncommon thing that felt a little out of place. And the fact that James was the one advocating to save Richard when everyone else were leaning towards the idea of letting him die, when he was arguably the one who suffered at Richard's hands most, felt a little too much like either a guilty conscience or misdirection. To add to that, I just couldn't imagine anyone else from the main six doing it. Yes, Meredith had just as many, if not more, reasons to kill Richard, but she also loved Richard. She was with him for years, and truth be told, they must have had a mostly good, supportive relationship for it to last this long. In the beginning of this novel as well, we get a glimpse of what their relationship was, and it's easy to see how Richard adores Meredith's character. Let's look at the scene where Gwendolyn forces Meredith to stand up in front of the rest of them and honestly define her biggest strength and her biggest weakness. Once Meredith pronounces her beauty as her biggest strength, Oliver makes this observation. Philippa and Alexander both fidgeted, avoiding Meredith's eyes. Richard was looking at her like he wanted to rip her clothes off on the spot. And just a few seconds later, when Meredith admits that she is afraid that she's prettier than she is talented or intelligent, Oliver notices Richard looking at her with the softest expression Oliver has ever seen on him. To me, the short observation indicates that while both Richard and Meredith are beautiful, passionate people, their relationship is not based solely on a physical attraction. There is a friendship there, an understanding. It just seemed impossible for me that Meredith could ignore all that they were and kill Richard, despite all the hurt she must have felt in regards to his actions. Then we have Wren, Richard's cousin. Sure, he has been obnoxiously rude towards everyone she loves lately, as well as he was getting more and more physically aggressive, but there is no way that Wren would kill her own cousin. If I'm being completely honest here, I can't even say that I truly buy the fact that Wren was okay with agreeing to let Richard die. I tried to explain this by temporary insanity mixed with peer pressure, but this particular tidbit seems highly unrealistic to me. And so we have Philippa, Alex, Oliver, and James left on our list of suspects. At this point of the book and throughout most of it, Philippa and Alex are the ones we learn the least about. The thing we know about Philippa is that she comes from a broken family and therefore she sees her friends as her family, and Alex is a druggie. Sure, you could say that Philippa killed Richard to protect the only family she has left, or that Alex attacked Richard under the influence of drugs, but neither of these options felt satisfying enough. They felt too boring, too predictable, in a sense maybe even overdone, which leaves us with Oliver and James. Oliver, as we know from the very first page of the book, was convicted for Richard's murder, and being able to follow the events through his eyes, I just knew that he is innocent. While James had a motive and opportunity and was behaving in a rather shady manner. So yeah, I would be surprised if majority of the people didn't just put two and two together and didn't identify James as a main suspect. And yet, the predictability of the identity of the murderer doesn't really matter. It doesn't take anything away from the enjoyment of this novel, as the biggest mystery of If We Were Villains wasn't who have done the killing, but why did Oliver end up going to prison for it? As I have mentioned before, this book is not really a murder mystery. It's a character-driven novel with dark academia undertones. And the characters as individuals, as well as their interactions with one another, is what makes If We Were Villains unforgettable. The chapters that come after Richard's death are absolutely brilliant. The way we get to see each and every one of the main six falling apart, dealing with the guilt and the tragedy in their own ways, is absolutely exquisite. Alex's drug problem escalating, James' anger issues, Wren's nervous breakdown. They all had such an individual, character-based responses to the guilt they were feeling, which begged the question, was it worth it? Was it worth letting Richard die? Yes, in that moment it felt like there is no other solution. It's them or Richard, But was that really the case? Let's stop for a moment to speculate. If Richard would have been saved, if he would have survived, do you really believe that anyone else but James would have faced the consequences? Sure, Richard was out of control, but did the group actually do anything to tame him? They could have talked with school, talked with the police, reported him for his actions, but instead they decided to let him die. Now, when it comes to the ending of the book, I have a hate-love-hate relationship with it. So let's look at three main storylines that comprise the ending of the novel. First and foremost, we get Oliver realizing that James killed Richard in self-defense, and consequently he confesses to being the one to commit the murder and goes to jail for 10 years. Now, I do not argue that this couldn't have happened. Oliver is a sensitive guy. He acted on an impulse. He felt like he needed to step up and protect James, a person he loves. As well as he felt guilty for letting Richard die and for getting into relationship with Meredith. He felt like he has always been the worst actor, the least important person in their friend group, and therefore by taking himself out of the equation, he will make everyone's life easier. But we're talking about 10 years in prison and a dark stain that will follow him for the rest of his life. Till the day he dies, he will be known as a man who killed his friend. And yes, you might say that he doesn't care about the opinion of others as long as his best friends know that he didn't do it. But come on. His family doesn't know that. His sisters can't be sure of that. His sisters, one of which is dealing with her fair share of problems already, will be affected simply by being related to a murderer. And if that doesn't matter, then let's look at all of this from the practical standpoint. Oliver has never finished his degree, and consequently he will have an insane amount of difficulties applying for jobs or finding something that pays more than a minimum wage. To add to that, it might be difficult for him to rent a place to live, and that's not even discussing the cultural shock of adapting to a life after being released from prison. So honestly, Oliver ignoring all of that and sacrificing his life in order to help James felt like a stretch. Or maybe like an obsession towards James mixed with his own high-functioning depression. But it definitely didn't feel like love to me. And then we get another major event in the ending of the novel, a James suicide. Now that's something I loved. That was something I preferred over the idea of him faking it, but we'll come to that in a moment. James killing himself would have been cathartic. It would have illustrated so well that Oliver didn't do James any favors by taking the blame. If anything, by trying to be a hero, he took away the only opportunity James had for redemption. He took away the opportunity for James to find peace, to ease his conscience. I really like the thought that maybe if Oliver would have told the truth, he would have managed to find a way to live his life as himself without being in anyone's shadow, as well as the idea that if James would have gone to prison himself, he would have still been alive. But that's unfortunately not the ending we got. At least that wasn't the ending that was implied. With the last pages, we were told that James lives, that he faked his death and moved away where no one knows him. Now I get that maybe James just couldn't handle being James anymore, but why not to just pack your bags and move without telling anyone where you're going? That would have the same effect and would hurt few less people in the process. I guess you could argue that James didn't want to risk anyone coming looking for him, but then why leave a cryptic message to Oliver? He wanted to run away, but he also wanted to be found. Now, of course, we could assume that James' last letter to Oliver was a way for him to tell Oliver that he's actually alive, or we could look at it as a wishful thinking on Oliver's part. But I really do not think that that's the case. Speaking about James' letter, I have to say that the ending of the novel left me confused about James' feelings towards Oliver and Wren. Since we follow Oliver, we know that his love for James is genuine, something he found surprising himself, something he struggled to admit. The same way we know that his feelings towards Meredith are genuine too. But what about James, Oliver, and Wren? Throughout the book, we get tons of little clues indicating that James has a thing for Wren. He's very attentive towards her, very protective of her. It is obvious enough that the others start to take notice. So does that mean that he actually cared for her, but at the same time he simply, as detective implied, couldn't resist the way Oliver loved him? He couldn't resist this pull of being unconditionally adored by someone? Or was he as torn between Oliver and Wren the same way Oliver was torn between James and Meredith? But then why he left the letter to Oliver alone? I guess that's something left to our interpretation. Either way, I feel sorry for Meredith. 10 years ago, she took a chance on a kind-hearted guy, and she was brutally placed as a second best. And now she decides to give Oliver a chance again, to let him back into her house and into her life after all this time, to be pushed away again, to lose to the same guy, to once again be proven that she's for some reason just not enough. Because you know it just as well as I do. If Oliver thinks that there is at least a tiny chance that James is alive, Oliver is already packing his bags to leave. But that's just my opinion. What about yours?